Hi, folks. Welcome to today's webinar. We're just going to wait a minute or two to let folks get in here and get settled. Hi, folks. I'm going to say one more time, Mike Wilson with the Northern Forest Center. I'll be hosting, facilitating today's webinar. We're going to give it just another minute or two to let other folks get in and get settled, and then we'll kick things off. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. So I'm Mike Wilson. I'm Senior Program Director with the Northern Forest Center, and appreciate everyone joining us for this next in our regular series of Building the New Forest Future webinars. Today, we're going to be doing a recap of the recent Northern Forest Outdoor Recreation Symposium. We'll give folks a little bit of an overview of what the event was, who was there, what went on, some of the ideas that came out of that session, and then we'll have an open conversation with some of our key partners and folks who helped put this event together. A couple quick housekeeping notes. First, please note that this webinar is being recorded. So hope that's okay with everyone. And all questions, when we get into the Q&A section, we strongly encourage folks to use the Q&A function on your computer rather than the chat. As those questions come through, we'll be sifting through and sorting them and passing them along to our panelists as we go. So again, just as context, this event, Northern Forest Outdoor Recreation Symposium, was held on May 14th and 15th, just a little over a month ago. And it was an opportunity it followed on an event that we hosted in partnership with the Northern Border Regional Commission back in 2018 to really dive into the role and importance of the outdoor recreation economy in this region. This is a sector that I think folks are increasingly recognizing as important to the regional economy in the Northern Forest, as well as important to overall community health and well-being in the region. So it was an exciting opportunity to bring folks together across the region from northern Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, and beyond, other interested folks, to get together and really dive into that topic. What we're going to do today a little bit is we'll do a bit of an introduction and overview of the symposium itself, and then we'll be inviting some of our regional and state partners to come in and join a conversation with you all. So just to kick things off, we first wanted to invite Rich Grogan from the Northern Border Regional Commission to join to speak a little bit about the Border Commission's engagement with the outdoor recreation economy generally and this particular event. So Rich will offer a few thoughts, and then I'll give a little bit more of a summary of what went on at the event, and we'll dive in from there.
That's good, Mike. Thanks so much. And thanks for putting this webinar together. I want to start off by thanking the Northern Forest Center for your hard work and coordination and stakeholder-driven approach to planning and facilitating the summit. I think we're all we all recognize that planning something like this has become significantly more complex since the pandemic. And you all made the event look really easy. So thank you for that. I think also, in my mind, just looking back on the event, I think a lot of the people that were there were what made it a success. So thanks to everybody who was able to join. I'm going to speak just quickly at a high level about NBRC's involvement with the outdoor recreation economy, and then I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Marina Bowie, who's on the webinar as well. And Marina oversees a lot of our funding programs that are specific to outdoor rec. So the Northern Border Regional Commission, which funds economic development activities in 4 states, Maine, New Hampshire, New York, and Vermont, has been actively involved in funding outdoor recreation projects since I've been with the commission, which is over 5 years now. And our commitment to funding this work has only gotten stronger in the last couple of grant cycles. We just put the wraps on our first grant round of 2024. And in this round, we made a commitment to change a classification, which is something that government funders can do, which is great, to be able to categorize outdoor recreation infrastructure as following under the definition of infrastructure, which opens it up to grants at the higher NBRC maximum of up to $1 million. So that's going to, in the future, allow us to be able to fund some larger outdoor recreation projects. And then a big component we've been involved in for the last several years is funding outdoor recreation planning capacity in each of the 4 NBRC states since 2019. And these offices collectively form what we call the Outdoor Economy Council, which gathers regularly to share updates from each state and brainstorms ways to collaborate going forward. My colleague Milena Tamer is also on this call, and Milena's involved in that Outdoor Economy Council as well. So if you see her name or see her show up, please say hello to her. So I'm going to pass the mic now to my colleague Marina, who I think is going to share some specifics of NBRC funding programs as they relate to outdoor rec. Thanks so much, Marina, for being here and sharing this. I know it's a busy time of year.
Thanks, Rich. Hello, everyone. My name is Marina Bowie. I serve as the Northern Border Regional Commission's Program Manager for our Forest Economy and Timber for Transit programs. And as Rich said, have overseen some of our work with the outdoor recreation sector. There are several ways that NBRC has intentionally supported outdoor recreation in recent years, including with these symposiums. We've facilitated regional connections, showcased the opportunities for outdoor recreation and economic development. We funded technical assistance, workforce development training, projects related to the outdoor recreation sector. And as Rich mentioned recently, we've integrated outdoor rec in our flagship Catalyst program, allowing funds to support construction of outdoor recreation infrastructure that is regularly and freely available to the public. NBRC has also supported the Environmental Protection Agency's Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program, which provides technical assistance to rural communities seeking to revitalize their downtowns and main streets through outdoor recreation. One of today's panelists, Bertaina, leads the RERC program, which to date has provided technical assistance to 9 communities within the Northern Border region. And as I mentioned, we've incorporated outdoor rec as an investment priority within our programs. So this year, our $50 million Catalyst program supports a broad range of economic development initiatives that will do things like modernize and expand water and wastewater systems, revitalize transportation infrastructure, but also funds will be used to grow outdoor recreation infrastructure and economies. Our definition of public infrastructure has been expanded to include construction of outdoor rec, such as all-purpose trails, trail bridges, etc., which improve health and promote physical activity. Importantly, infrastructure projects must also demonstrate they're regularly and freely available to the public. I mention infrastructure as that definition unlocks a higher potential award at NBRC. but those projects that don't fall under infrastructure can still be eligible under our non-infrastructure categories. Other outdoor rec projects might fit within our $25 million Timber for Transit program if they involve feasibility analyses or construction of transportation or transportation adjacent infrastructure that showcases the suitability of advanced wood materials and composites in those applications. So this is just a really brief summary, and I can certainly point to many examples of NBRC funded projects that either incorporate or focus on outdoor recreation. Our team is interested and available to listen and assist with project concepts and to help prospective applicants navigate our various programs. And with that, I look forward to today's discussion and to your ideas about the future of the outdoor rec economy. Thanks.
Thanks, Marina. Thanks, Rich, for those comments and overall for your support of this event and the outdoor recreation sector in general across the region. So I want to take a few minutes now just to set a little more context for the event. What was it? Who was there? What were our goals? What some of the ideas that came out of the event? And then we'll introduce the rest of our panel to dive into some further discussion of the event. So if we can move. So as noted already, this event was sponsored primarily by the Northern Border Regional Commission, but we also want to really acknowledge and thank our state level partners, the Adirondack Foundation, Vermont Community Foundation, Maine Community Foundation, and the Neil and Louise Tillotson Fund of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation for helping for chipping in to make the event work, for helping us make it as affordable as we could for folks from across the region to join. Next slide. In all of our work on this, we worked hard for better part of a year and a half with these partners to really shape the content of the event itself. And so it included the Border Commission. It also included U.S. EPA with Steph Bertaina from the Rural Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program, New Hampshire Office of Business and Economic Affairs, and the Outdoor Recreation Office there, Granite Outdoor Alliance, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Maine Office of Outdoor Recreation, Maine Outdoor Brands, Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative, Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance. Then we had one wildcard participant in our planning committee, which is Denise Valley, who's a former town manager in Gorham, New Hampshire. So this group really worked closely and hard for about almost a year and a half, really pulling this event together, the overall agenda. We couldn't have done the event without them. Next slide, please. So through all this, just so folks know who was there, back one, we had about 181 people there, and that was intentional and capped just from a cost standpoint for the event. We couldn't put together an event like this for 300 people. It just wasn't working or wasn't affordable for folks. So we had to cap the event, but the folks who were there, as noted, were great contributors. It was quite a good mix of folks from across the region. The event was at the Mount Washington Resort Hotel in New Hampshire, so we had good representation from New Hampshire, but pretty good balance from across the region. And also notably, the event involved a lot of participants. 52 people were involved, presenting in or participating in leading sessions, and that's. So the bulk of the event, I'm not going to try to walk through every session and everything that went on. Can I see the next slide? Ultimately, what we were trying to do with this event were these things. Generally take stock, what's going on in the region with the outdoor recreation economy, what's changed since 2018, What are the trends, risks, opportunities that we're seeing? Equally importantly, we wanted to create space and opportunity for people who are involved in this work to just simply connect, learn from each other, and come away with new ideas and inspiration to continue to fuel their work in the sector and expand it. Throughout the event, we're looking for opportunities to share what works. Again, there's a tremendous amount of great work going on in this sector across the Northern Forest region. So really trying to highlight events, activities, programs, resources that are coming together that are proving successful essentially across this section in the region, and look for those opportunities to replicate and share ideas across the region. And then ultimately, really wanted to start thinking about what are the shared regional priorities and action steps. When we pulled folks together back in 2018 for the first Outdoor Rec Symposium, the situation was pretty different. It was early, not early in the world of outdoor recreation, but it was kind of early stages of folks really thinking and organizing around the outdoor recreation economy. Maine had just created an Office of Outdoor Recreation. Vermont and New Hampshire were in very, very early stages. New Hampshire didn't have an office yet. So it was very formative, and it was an opportunity to really start thinking creatively about what are the opportunities? Why is this important? Since then, that dynamic has changed. I think there's been a increasingly rapidly growing recognition of the importance of outdoor recreation for the Northern Forest economy and for communities across the region. We've seen increased capacity in each of the states at our national level to invest in this, both from a organizational standpoint and a funding standpoint, and we've seen some real changes. We've lived through the pandemic and the surge of activity that we saw come through that, both the surge of activity and the challenges to businesses and communities that took place during the pandemic. We've continued to see changes in climate change. We've seen increasing interest in diversity, equity, and inclusion in this space. So a lot has changed. So really, part of our interest with this event was simply just to understand what's going on, but then importantly, to really dive in and think, okay, we all recognize that this is important now. What are the opportunities to work together regionally to bring scale and capacity to this work? So I'm not going to walk through the full set of panels. I think we had a dozen or 13 or 14 panels, not there yet on this slide. And again, they spanned from entrepreneurship to diversity, equity, and inclusion, to funding for outdoor recreation, for community planning, for infrastructure, climate change, business support. So we really dove into a lot of topics, just simply to share and create opportunities for people to be exposed and learn about things that are going on in the region. But then much of the second day of the event, and this is the next slide, much of the second day of the event was really focused on this idea of where are the opportunities regionally. So we identified these 5 what we called spheres of action to bring into it, and thinking about when we think across the region, what are the sectors or the spheres of action where people are working on a day-to-day basis, where they might be bumping into each other locally, but not at a regional scale, and create space and opportunity for folks working in each of these spheres to really sit down together and talk and think about what are the common experiences and opportunities that they're seeing in their place that are consistent across the region. So, those spheres were business, so looking at retail, manufacturing, recreation experience providers; community action, so municipal and organizational leaders who are really working at a town or a local level; trails and conservation groups, are a lot of folks in this sector at this event, really groups working to create and maintain the recreational infrastructure that's so important to this sector; government, so again, generally above the municipal level, but state, regional, and federal government representatives; and then resource, kind of a broader group of public funding agencies, foundations, educational institutions, and the others that are providing broader support to this sector. So with this framing, we took and this was challenging work. I will say up front, those of us involved with facilitating, I think everyone there recognized we were trying to do a lot with these conversations. So within each of these spheres, we put groups together and facilitated conversations to really tease out of them where are these opportunities regionally, and then to winnow that down and process that, recognizing there's a lot of opportunities. But if we needed to zero in a little bit, what are the one or two most ripe for regional action ideas that came out of this? So we go to the next slide, please. And this was an important piece for us to think about. Like when we think about regional action, what is it that would really help us strengthen this if we were to do it together? Think about it at a regional scale, but recognizing that doesn't necessarily require, okay, there is an initiative, this is happening, one group is leading this is happening at a regional scale. But regional action could be that. It could be a single initiative where there is, a group of partners who are working together at a regional scale to do a thing. But it could also be less formal, recognizing, okay, these are important ideas, there's opportunity here. This is work that can or perhaps should happen at a state level and across the region. It doesn't necessarily have to be coordinated at a regional level, but understanding that there's work that could be happening in a more loosely coordinated way across the region that's moving ideas, that's moving progress, but isn't requiring that kind of formal, this is the single one big regional initiative. So through this process, we came up with a series of ideas. The next slide. And again, I'm sorry these aren't bigger, but from the business group, there was the idea of credentializing the regional workforce. So building in consistent standards and credentials across the region, or again at a state level, but really having some clear credentials there. Strengthening the broader network of business infrastructure and support services to support those businesses and entrepreneurs. At the community level, there's a lot of interest in the idea of scalable outdoor recreation design and planning guides and training. So is there a way to bring consistency and resources to local planning and trail development work so that it's not everyone has to recreate the wheel and start from scratch? And then also really thinking about and sharing stories from the region and the role and impact that outdoor recreation has across the region to help build its profile and build support. At the government level, there's a lot of, and this is a topic that came up in 2018 as well. But as it stands, there isn't a consistent and clearly accessible data set for the outdoor recreation sector across the Northern Forest region. I think there's a broad recognition that would be helpful from a planning standpoint, from an advocacy standpoint, from a funding standpoint. And then also interest at a government level at continuing to invest in planning and project implementation at a local level. There's an opportunity for government to support that localized work. From a broader resource standpoint, focus really, there were two big ideas that came there. One is, and this ties to some degree to the credentializing, but really addressing workforce needs and recognition that we have an aging workforce in this region, and many businesses are struggling to find employees. But to really develop a comprehensive career pathway K through 16 to meet this demand in the long term, not just next year, but over time, to really be engaging youth in career pathways in this sector. And then also to be really thinking about how do we better integrate outdoor recreation and health systems, recognizing some opportunity for recognizing the health and wellness benefits of outdoor recreation, and are there ways to be more intentional about that integration. And then on the trails and conservation piece, a lot of focus on becoming a more climate resilient recreation region. I think a lot of recognition of the impacts that we've seen visibly in the last couple of years in this space, and what does it take to become more resilient, to build infrastructure that's more resilient to the changes that we're seeing in the region or globally. And then to create, again, more resources, consistent resources that can support trail planning and advocacy in this space. So this is a simple list, kind of a simple list to look at. But these are 10 of probably 50 ideas that came up in these discussions. But where are there opportunities? What are things that are important? So those broader ideas are not lost, but from the process, we really zeroed in on these as some key opportunities for us to be thinking about at a regional level. We did not try to get to a point of this is the action plan, this is how all of these things are being implemented, but this is the framework. We were trying to think through the process, where are those opportunities? So with that, I want to, with these ideas on the table here, we're actually going to invite all of you who are here participating to help weigh in on this. We're going to, Isabella is going to share, I don't know exactly how this is going to work, but we're going to share a link to a survey. I'm guessing I'm seeing that now. I'm guessing everyone is seeing that now. And we really want to invite all of you to weigh in on these ideas. Again, this is not a final voting process that's going to make decisions, but just to help understand where people see priorities and opportunities across the region. So while we're going to shift now to introduce some of our other partners for more of a panel discussion, but while we're doing that, we would love to invite everyone here to respond to this poll, and we'll bring those results up a little bit later in today's discussion. So with that, again, I hope that makes sense in terms of helping folks understand what this event was and how it worked and who was there and what we were trying to do there. And now to put a little, to build on that a little bit more, we want to invite some representatives of our state and regional partners from the planning committee to join us for a little bit more of a discussion. So I'll do very quick introductions and invite each of our panelists to speak a little bit more. So first, folks who are joining us today are Laura DiBetta from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Office of Outdoor Recreation, Steph Bertaina from U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, who manages the Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program, Janel Lawton from the New Hampshire Office of Outdoor Recreation Industry Development, Tyler Ray from the Granite Outdoor Alliance, and Jackie Dagger from the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economy Council. So thank you all for joining us. And again, I think first, we just want to ask each of you to maybe offer a bit more introduction of yourselves and just share a couple quick reflections that you had either during or since the event. Steph, I'll go first. We'll go national first.
Well, thanks, Mike, and thank you very much for inviting me to join your panel. Again, my name is Steph Bertaina, and as mentioned, I work for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in an office called the Office of Community Revitalization. I am based in Washington, D.C., but I've had the distinct privilege of getting to work in partnership with many communities across the Northern Forest region through the Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program. That's been mentioned a couple times, and that is a partnership between EPA, the Northern Border Regional Commission, the Appalachian Regional Commission, and the USDA Forest Service. So again, I was on the planning team for the symposium, getting to work alongside of all these wonderful people, and again, have gotten to work in the region through the work program. So in terms of just a few reflections, one of my takeaways from participating in the symposium was just that clearly, the 4 states that are in the Northern Forest region are just leaders in embracing outdoor recreation and really harnessing its potential to be a sustainable and equitable part of the region's economy. So that really stood out loud and clear to me, just sitting in the room and seeing all of the 180 people who were there coming together to discuss these issues. At this year's symposium, these leaders and practitioners came together to really reinforce, I think, the region's commitment to thinking proactively about these issues and really deeply about the role of outdoor recreation in the region. And so not just kind of letting things happen, but really coming together with intention. And I think that was really, incredible to me. So it was really inspiring. I was inspired. I walked away from the couple of days being really inspired by all of the people in the room and the amazing stories that were shared. The RERC program, the Recreation Economy for Rural Communities program, really was born from that first symposium back in 2018. So some of the ideas that were generated all those years ago planted the seeds for what eventually became the RERC program. And so it was really neat to come back full circle several years later, now that we've worked in partnership with communities across the Northern Forest region and helping them build their outdoor recreation economy, and to hear from them, how did that go? What tools, do they still need help with in terms of building the sector of their economy? I think some themes for me that stood out just really briefly, and Mike, you mentioned this, but climate and resiliency just came up again and again throughout the symposium. It seemed like not a person in the room hadn't been affected either personally or professionally by some kind of weather-related, climate-related disaster in recent years. And so just the sheer fact that climate change is just an ever-present reality for all of us. And it seemed that there was a genuine commitment on the part of all of the people in the room to not only recognizing that, but then also making actionable what can we do to really make sure that we have a resilient outdoor recreation economy and resilient communities. So that was one theme. Another theme I heard was equity, just making sure that everyone in the community can access and benefit from the growing outdoor recreation economy. And I think that's frankly an issue we're still struggling through, but there have been a lot of great successes in that front. And I think partners committed to it. And then just the last thing that I'd say is just around stewardship. I heard a lot of focus around the importance of making sure we're protecting and sustaining the natural resources that the outdoor recreation economy depends on. And so again, commitment on the part of all the states, all the players in the room, and making sure that stewardship is really front and center. So those are just a few big picture reflections from me. So thank you, Mike.
Sorry, I keep muting myself. Laura, why don't we go west to east? So why don't you jump in?
I had a feeling you would do that. Thanks, Mike.
I saw you were unmuted already.
I knew it. So hi, everyone. So again, I'm Laura DiBetta. I'm director of the Office of Outdoor Recreation, which is within the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. I'm based in Albany. And just quickly, we're one of several state agencies that work together as part of an interagency collaborative on shared priorities related to the outdoor recreation economy. That includes Empire State Development and the Division of Tourism. It includes the Office of Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation, and some others. The state of New York was not represented at the 2018 symposium. So I'm just really pleased to be able to say, not only was I part of the planning committee, but New York was also, I think, well represented and part of these important conversations. So that's just something we're really happy that we could be a partner in this year. In thinking of some of the key reflections, my couple that I was going to mention have sort of been touched on, and I had a chance to talk with some of my colleagues. And one thing, I think that we heard a lot of throughout the conference was just related to how projects and initiatives get implemented. And the common theme was, while the states, we have the funding, we have the resources, we don't always have the people in the communities best suited to design these solutions and to guide and shape them. And so the model that really does seem to work well is directing funding resources to local communities. And they don't lack ideas, they don't lack solutions, they lack resources. So, and that you see that as one of the sort of themes that came out of the symposium. And the other thing is a reflection, and Steph, you mentioned it, Mike, you mentioned it, I hope it was clear through the agenda that the planning committee did, put a lot of importance and emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I think it's fair to say that the participants were not as diverse as we would have liked to have seen. And so I think that making it a priority to engage particularly Black and Brown communities as part of these discussions, and certainly at a future symposium is going to be really important so that we can be serious about equity as we try to tackle some of the challenges we face, like climate change and protecting natural resources. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Jackie?
Thanks, Mike. I'm really excited to be here and reflect on what was a really fantastic couple of days together for regional conversation. And again, my name is Jackie Dagger. I lead the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative in Vermont, or VOREC for short. And VOREC in Vermont is how we're working on outdoor recreation economy and strengthening that in our state. The core of VOREC is a partnership between the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation and the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, as well as a 15-person steering committee of public-private partners. And together we use a collective impact model to make progress and work on projects that have landscape scale impacts. I thought Steph and Laura have done a really great job sharing some reflections, and I would share those reflections. And I thought I would add just some reflections on what it was like to be at the event for anyone tuning in who might not have been there. But I really appreciated the energy that everyone brought to the event. There was a lot of people leaning in, participating in the workshops or the panels that were planned, really being thoughtful about how the information being shared in those panel conversations could be applicable to the region. And you saw those regional actions that are ripe for action right now that Mike shared. And those came out of a million notes through sticky notes that were posted around the space, conversations that were happening outside of the panels that were hosted. And I just really appreciated the opportunity not only to connect with the folks who were there from Vermont, but to connect with folks working on similar things in New Hampshire, in New York, in Maine, in New Hampshire. So just a lot of idea generation and good networking that was happening in addition to creating those actions. And then the other reflection I had was just on how similar the ripe for actions were to things that we've been discussing in our own states. And I think we'll get a little bit of time to talk about that. But I think, at a state level, at least in Vermont, we're thinking a lot about a lot of the actions that came out of our regional conversation, and just thinking about what of those actions do we work on regionally, and what of those do we work on in our states, and how do those support and strengthen each other? And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So excited to be here. Thanks, Mike.
Great. Thanks, Jackie. We'll have time in a few minutes to share a little bit more about what we see as some of that alignment and next steps in the states and beyond. Janel and Tyler, I'm going to defer to you all on who'd like to go first.
I beat you. I'm going to start. Janel Lawton. I am the director of the Office of Outdoor Recreation Industry Development for the state of New Hampshire. And first, thanks to the Northern Forest Center and NBRC for all the efforts over a year's time pulling this symposium together. It was really wonderful to meet at the symposium and connect with colleagues from across the Northern Borders states. Collaboration and sharing goals is really important to building the outdoor recreation economy and sector. And so we got to do a lot of that over 2 days. And the takeaways were many. But the one big immediate takeaway for New Hampshire was that we needed to have a state level debrief. So 1 week after the symposium, we had a follow-up poll and a meeting hosted by Granite Outdoor Alliance. And based on the sphere of action for the regional priorities, New Hampshire attendees were invited to share their priorities with the Granite Outdoor Alliance, ORID, my office, and Commissioner Caswell. So from that debrief, New Hampshire came away with areas to focus on, several critical priorities to help us enhance the outdoor recreation sector and economy. building workforce pathways and programs and information sharing platforms, engaging with communities in stewardship programs, prioritizing health and well-being within the outdoor rec industry, ensuring climate resiliency, securing consistent outdoor recreation industry funding, fostering local community development and capacity, enhancing visitor use and safety communications and marketing efforts, and supporting the outdoor recreation businesses were all the top priorities that came up in that New Hampshire debrief. And of course, we know that these tie back to those regional priorities. So we'll be looking for ways to leverage on a regional level how we can move forward all these initiatives. Tyler, do you want to jump in?
Absolutely. Thanks, Janel. So I'm Tyler Ray with Granite Outdoor Alliance, the Outdoor Business Alliance for New Hampshire. And Janel just kind of set the stage for our debrief, which was reflective of the overall outcomes of the symposium. And what that meant to us was that, man, there's a lot of stuff going on. This is wild. So how are we going to make sense of this all? So let's do more of these types of road mapping. And that's what we're going to do. That's one of the big priorities from our level. You know, we're the facilitator, the playmakers, but we need the participation to get it done. And so we're going to dive in on a road mapping that will hopefully launch early fall. But it's important because it's there's just a widespread array of issues that are very important, and through a variety of stakeholder groupings, focus groups, event activations, and so forth. Among other fresh reports that we have, not to mention a SCORP report, Janel's office did an inventory report. Then we're all going to get together and have a big wrestling match and find out which priority comes out on top. And once we figure that out, we'll have a clear direction of where we want to go. And so, you know, when we identify those priorities, the important part is identifying also who those participants are, who the collaborative participants are, because this is the angle, right? This is all coming together and figuring this out and not doing this alone. That was a big takeaway from the symposium from my perspective. And then also matching it with some funding, right? Like, we all know that this stuff, whatever we all do, takes money. And, you know, whether we generate some here, some there, you know, let's move away from the bake sales, supporting the trailheads. Let's go to bigger dollars. And that's why it's exciting to have this symposium and have Rich here supporting everything. And so that's a big, the roadmap. That's New Hampshire's next step. And so we'll have some outcomes that arrive out of that. So our big ask for all you New Hampshireites on the call here is to participate. That's going to be really important. Also, to sort of support that roadmap is, you know, this summer we have to kick it off. I'm going to take this moment to say, for anyone, we have a canoe paddling networking event July 18th, and we'll dump a link in the chat. So if you want to sign up to continue this momentum, it's a lot of fun. Let's have this talk on the river. We also have our kickoff. We've done a bit of a pivot with our outdoor lifestyle festival called Granite, and we're going to launch an awareness campaign towards that for 2025. So we're going to run Granite. We're going to pause a year with Granite, really build our collaborations and our partners. We think that it's at the level of an outside festival that just happened in Denver. And we want to get the right parties at the table to really do this right. But we're going to kick it off September 28th, a little bit outside of the Northern Forest region in Manchester, but it is a statewide effort. And so that's going to set the stage. So we're excited to have folks come to that. It's going to be an outdoor adventure film festival at a McIntyre ski area. So I'm just kind of softly announcing that right now to set your calendars. But a lot of exciting stuff happening in New Hampshire. We're looking forward to getting around the table. Janel and I are working hard for everyone. And so we appreciate all the support and participation. And again, thanks, Mike, and your team for putting this on. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you all. And again, Janel and Tyler, I think you started sliding into the next question already in terms of what we're seeing, what you all are seeing as next steps, either for your organizations or at a state level. And so I do want to pass that question on to others. Also, though, I want to encourage folks who are here participating As you listen, if you have questions about the outdoor recreation economy and opportunities in the Northern Forest region, please go ahead and put questions into the Q&A session, and we'll pass those along to the panelists as they come in. So again, building on what Janel and Tyler were just referencing in terms of some of the specific actions, alignment and actions and activities that are taking place in New York. Jackie, Laura, love to hear from you about things that you have on your agendas for activity in each of your states and how you see that aligning with some of the ideas that came out of the symposium. And Steph, you're not a state. But yeah, love to invite you to offer additional ideas and thoughts in terms of follow-on activity, either growing directly from the event or connected to or inspired by some of those ideas. Laura, you're already unmuted.
Oh, well, you know what? I am muted on my phone, but that's okay. So I'm not jumping ahead of everyone, but I'm happy to share. You know, so, well, first of all, there's so many things I could talk about. So just trying to hone in on kind of the ones that are top of mind for me, especially in my small little office. You know, one of our priorities moving forward, I think, just reflects what's unique about New York in this region, and that is the diversity of our state. And so while there isn't a ripe for action item that necessarily focuses on DEI, that is very central to what we're doing here in New York. You know, I think if we're serious about addressing issues like climate change and protecting natural resources, then everyone needs to know about and have an opportunity to connect with these places. So to that end, you know, DEC, we just recently announced our first Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Civil Rights. We just hired our first Chief Diversity Officer to lead that office and bring together DEI, accessibility, and civil rights work under this new office. And while, you know, a lot of it is a little bit inward focused, a lot of it is workforce development, which does certainly relate to a huge theme of the conference. But we also expect to work closely with the new Chief Diversity Officer. Her name is Tanya Wheeler, and her team on more external work, state land management issues, access, and external programs, and how we engage broader communities in our work. The other thing is continuing to build on our sustainable tourism and responsible recreation efforts. We are working right now on further developing initiatives like our statewide birding trail and our sister agency, the State Park Centennial. Both of these things working to drive visitation in the Northern Forest region, thanks to grant support from the NBRC. So thank you, Rich and Marina. We're also in the midst of a visitor use management process for the High Peaks area of the Adirondacks. There's also a parallel effort in a section of the Catskill Park. And just yesterday, we announced public meetings related to that process. So the one for the Adirondacks is actually on June 27th. So that's next week. And at those meetings, we're going to be sharing results of data collection and analysis efforts, soliciting feedback from the public on potential management strategies for the High Peaks, as well as the Catskill Cove area of the Catskills. And then we hope to have draft reports out for public comment this fall, and then finalize recommendations by the end of the year. I'll just also mention, you know, we are increasingly connecting with our sister agencies that are focused on health, mental and physical health. So, you know, we just partnered on a hugely successful event working with the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, the Department of Veterans Services, as well as state parks. So I expect to see more of that. It's definitely a trend we're noticing, and it's a theme for the conference. So I expect and hope that we'll be doing more to bring in the health, you know, connect the health agencies with the recreation agencies and see what else we can do to amplify the mental and physical health benefits of the outdoors. So again, there's so much more. I certainly could talk a lot more about climate change, but I'm going to leave that for the climate change experts and pass it over maybe to Jackie.
Would you like to go next, Jackie?
I would love to. Well, in Vermont, Move Forward Together Vermont is our work to develop one vision and set of actionable priorities to strengthen outdoor recreation in the state for the next 5 years. I just dropped a link to this planning process in the chat if you're interested. And we have, since the beginning of this year, been going through a phase to collect public input and information to help us draft this vision and set of priorities. What we're doing is bringing together resources from our statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan and our VORIC action plan. And we're using those resources to create this vision and priorities with the goal of helping all of our partners, all of our stakeholders working in the outdoor recreation space to align and make some real progress over the next 5 years. We're at a point now where we're getting ready to launch that draft vision and priorities. And it's really exciting. I think a lot of the things that we heard reflected during the symposium at a regional scale, we're seeing show up in our vision and priorities that we're drafting for the state. Some of the things that are rising to the surface through that process are things like climate inequity are lenses through which we need to look at all of our work over the next 5 years. Nothing we're going to do in the next 5 years we can do without thinking about climate and equity. We're also seeing that actions around stewardship, wellness, a lot of what Laura was talking about with connecting the health aspect of outdoor recreation to the activity of outdoor recreation and the economic benefit of outdoor recreation. That's really important, those wellness, like personal health benefits of outdoor recreation, as well as the economic development piece of outdoor recreation. You know, our offices of outdoor recreation and our work exists in the Northern Forest, but there's still a lot of work to do in terms of raising awareness about how economic development supports outdoor recreation on the landscape, how we make those connections in a sustainable, beneficial way, and really helping municipalities at the local level to understand, like, how do I access those benefits? How do I engage with that in a way that works at my scale? And so we're seeing all of those things come out in what we're drafting for this vision and priorities, and we're really excited about that. We are also thinking about the outdoor business community as a part of that, in addition to launching the next phase of Move Forward Together Vermont, which is collecting public input on the draft vision and priorities. We're also gearing up to launch an outdoor business survey by the end of today, actually. So we're going to be collecting a lot of information from businesses across Vermont that will help us look at outdoor business in comparison to outdoor recreation providers, outdoor recreation users, to help us understand and have some real solid data to look at what outdoor recreation looks like on the landscape of Vermont. So we're really excited about that process. We also just announced recipients of our most recent round of the VORIC Community Grant Program. A lot of the things that we were talking about at the symposium were around municipalities and local level, like the resources and technical assistance they need to be able to work on outdoor recreation at a local scale. And in Vermont, we're doing a lot of that work through our grants program, the community grants program, and we just announced 51 new projects that are going to be funded over the next 2 years through that grant program. They're making an impact in all of Vermont's counties, and include projects that are focused on outdoor equity and recovery following the flooding last summer. So lots of good work that's going to be unfolding over the next 2 years, an opportunity to fold in some of the actions that we saw come out of the symposium. I'll pause there.
That's great. Thank you, Jackie. Steph, do you want to share any thoughts on kind of next steps and activities from your perspective?
Sure, happy to. And just also acknowledging that I know we're not able to be joined by our friends from Maine on this panel, but I know, if we were, they would also have similarly inspiring next steps for action as all the other states did. And I'm always very impressed by, again, the Northern Forest states. You guys are doing so much. It's really incredible. From my perspective, for the recreation economy for rural communities program in particular, we heard at the symposium, federal co-chair from NBRC, Chris Saunders, mentioned the exciting news that we are going to support together another round of the recreation economy for rural communities program. So that's really exciting. We're going to be announcing the next opportunity to apply soon. So I'll put some links in the chat for that if you're interested in applying for that program for its future round. And I think we'll see, through that program, again, we've had 2 rounds so far. We've worked with a total of 35 communities all across the country, 9 of which are in the Northern Forest region. We've learned so much through those projects. And I think, again, mirroring the themes of the symposium, some things that I think we'd like to explore in this next round of the work program are, again, what are communities doing around making sure that their recreation economy and their downtowns, their built environment are resilient and can withstand the effects of climate change. And so I think climate will, again, increasingly be a focus area that we're really excited to work with our community partners on. I think, again, equity, again, I mentioned it earlier, the work program had a very clear equity goal in its last round of the program, and we're going to continue that commitment to making sure that we're deeply engaging with our community partners, helping them to expand who's at the table through the planning process, who's benefiting from the outdoor recreation economy. So that's, I think, another area of growth for us that's reflective of what we learned at the symposium. And then again, stewardship and sustainability. So many communities are seeing the growth of their outdoor recreation economy coming and happening. Never more, evident than during the pandemic, of course, but that those trends have continued. And so helping communities think through, how can we make sure that stewardship is really at the fore? So as our recreation economy is growing, we're making sure that we're preserving what makes us authentic and really special places. Another thing that I just want to mention is just the engagement of young people in particular. This theme did come up at the symposium. I'm not sure if it ended up in one of our main actions, but it's certainly just so critical to make sure that young people are engaged in these discussions, in leading outdoor recreation initiatives, and starting outdoor recreation businesses. And so I think exploring through the work program how we can better engage and empower the younger generations in this sphere is going to be really important to us. I think, again, we just recognized at the symposium that there's continued to be this need for capacity, whether that's planning, and the work program can be part of that, or the implementation funding that follows. And that's, again, many federal agencies, all of our state partners are supporting both of those key elements for the local communities to be able to really make progress in this issue. So again, we're seeing that there's just this need for planning really thoughtfully to prepare for this growth that is going to come, because our populations are increasing. I suspect that the Northern Forest region will be recipients of perhaps the climate migrants. People are discovering the Northern Forest states. And so as growth is happening, how does that affect the outdoor recreation economy? How can we think proactively about the future of not only the recreation economy, but our communities that are part of the region? So I think those are all just themes and things that I think that we'd love to work on and support in partnership with all of the amazing state leadership that's represented on this panel, and with NBRC and with the Northern Forest Center and others. So I think I'll leave it there.
Great, thank you. And I was also going to reference our colleagues, Jenny Kordick from Maine Outdoor Brands and Caroline Willett from the Maine Office of Outdoor Recreation had a conflict today, so they just weren't able to join us, but they've been close and great partners on this work. So one other thought, or just a reminder to folks, if you haven't yet, please take a minute to respond to the poll that we put up a few minutes ago. We're going to take a look at that in just a minute. In the meantime, I think as maybe a setup to that, I'd like to ask each of our panelists to, and as we're thinking about, again, you're busy, you have all kind, there's a lot of great work going on in your places through your offices that needs to continue. Again, one of the themes through the symposium in this conversation is recognizing some of the commonality across some of those issues and work. How do we think about and approach some of this work? What's some of the benefit and opportunity to approach some of this work from a regional standpoint? Just be curious to hear each or any of you reflect a little bit on what you see as key principles or benefits of regional collaboration and how that can be effective and helpful to the work that you're trying to accomplish in your kind of sub-regional places. And I'll take a show of hands on this. Laura, you don't have to go first if you don't.
You can jump in.
All right, great. Thanks, Tyler.
Without question, the Northern Forest regions are very similar despite state lines. And, from our perspective, from a business alliance, working with Kelly in Vermont, Jenny in Maine, and, thinking about what our needs are from our constituency, which is, business and organizations. There's certainly a need for enhanced infrastructure and so forth. And so we've been collaborating to talking with folks like Rich and others to see how can we piece something together that helps support that environment and creates a positive landscape where the small businesses can thrive. Lack of resources, capacity, all the buzzwords we all have heard over and over, it's all rings true. And so how do we tackle that stuff and actually do something about it? And so, together, with numbers, there's power in numbers. I'm sure there's a number of cliches for that, but that's really the impact from our perspective is really bolstering that small business community, because at the end of the day, when you're trying to affect policy change and so forth, money talks. And so you got to have that private sector voice. That's really important, but it's very easy to not have it if it's not mobilized correctly. And so you want to create a productive atmosphere for small businesses to be able to not only just run their business, but have socially conscious businesses. There's companies that don't care about that, but there's companies that do. And so let's support that environment, because at the end of the day, what's our industry without clean air, water, and land and so forth? So having that financial and social commitment is really important. So we could do that and leverage our footprint to gain ground on that front.
Other thoughts?
I'll jump in.
Oh, no, Janel.
I think one area of collaboration across the region could be data, and this was talked about in depth at the symposium. All of our decisions need to be grounded in good, solid data, and that includes looking at the outdoor recreation activities, businesses, organizations, all the players within the outdoor rec sector. So we have buckets of data, but really what we're looking at regionally, we have an opportunity to do a bit of collaboration on that level to hopefully lift everyone's initiatives at the state level.
Thanks. Yeah, Jackie.
I'll jump in too, and build off of Janel a little bit, because when I think about our regional collaboration, I think there's all kinds of benefits to us connecting across states, connecting as a Northern Forest region, because we could all be doing this work separately, right? But we wouldn't be learning from each other. We wouldn't be benefiting from the connections that we have and the similarities that we have. And I think some of the things that I've appreciated about the regional work that we've been able to do already is that opportunity to learn, to look at one state that might be doing a project or an initiative and benefit from the model that they've created and be able to do that in a maybe quicker way, or to leverage resources because that model exists. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to look at our regional scale and think about, how could we benefit from identifying ways we can collect data. We can think about how planning is done at the regional scale so that we can take that that regional model or idea or funding and channel it into the work that we're doing in our individual states.
Yeah.
Laura?
And I'll just echo what everyone's already said. You know, I think at a very basic and foundational level, support and learning is so valuable among this group, right? Our 4 states, we have very small offices trying to do many things, and many people would like us to do many more things. So I think just at a very basic level, we can, you know, acting as a sounding board, learning from each other's successes and challenges, and sort of like Jackie said too, just because something may not be exactly transferable to our state, right? Like New York being so big, that doesn't mean that there aren't pieces that we can't learn from, that maybe it's scalable elements, maybe it's a really amazing process that was used, and could we replicate that in our own state? So I think support and learning are absolutely just essential. I do think data was the one I was going to say too. Like if there's something that we could start with, you know, among our offices even, is identifying what are those data points? What do we have? What don't we have? What do we wish we had? And then we could, you know, take it from there. But so we're all on pretty much the same page, even though we didn't plan this ahead of time.
Steph, thoughts?
The one thing that I would add, and again, echoing what everyone else had said, but I would just add, you know, increased focus on capacity. And this has come up, you know, many of us have mentioned this already, but I think, again, the 4 states are amazing. You know, having your strong but small but mighty outdoor recreation office is really impressive. I think the more we can tap into boosting, you know, local capacity, tapping into regional planning organizations who provides like such key critical support for local communities. And I know there's a lot of that, you know, multiple levels of government conversations that are already happening, but the more that we can have these regional conversations really involve and learn from the lessons of local communities and of those regional planning organizations, I think it'll only be the stronger. And so the more that we can kind of bridge and make those connections, help local communities understand the really crazy milieu of funding resources that are out there, helping them access that, I think could be really key. And so capacity to then take not only the planning capacity, but then taking the next step of implementing these ideas on the ground and connecting those dots in partnership with local communities and regional organizations.
Great. Well, thank you all. So we're gonna show the results. We're gonna try to show the results of the poll now. We've never done this before. Can everyone see that? I can only see the panelists. So can you indicate to me whether you're seeing this or not?
I can see it, Mike.
Okay. So if again, this is a little bit of an experiment. I'm scrolling. Like, do you all see me scrolling, or do you need to scroll it yourselves? So some people are not seeing this. I see from Hannah McCarthy. Again, this is a bit of an experiment for us. Can others weigh in on whether you're seeing this or not? It sounds like the panelists are seeing it.
I think we can see it, but if they can't,
Oh, wait,
okay,
no.
they say they can see it. Yeah.
Okay, most people are seeing it. Okay, great. Wow, suddenly things got very active. So yeah, I think if we all just, yeah, again, the top of this is just kind of where we're all from, which is actually quite balanced, which is great. We're a little off 50-50 of folks who were at the event back in May. And then I think if we scroll down through here, I guess the 4 things I will say that jump out. The highest scores would be strengthening outdoor recreation business infrastructure and services, investing in additional planning assistance, coaching and implementation to build community readiness for this work, addressing workforce needs through developing comprehensive career pathways. And I guess those are the, oh, and then I guess the next highest, kind of tied. No, becoming a climate resilient region and scalable outdoor recreation design and planning support. So again, I share this. You all can see it, but I'm curious. I'm going to turn this to our panelists a little bit. If you have thoughts or reflections on what you see here and how that jives with your own work and conversations that we've been having, that we had at the symposium.
Yeah, there's a lot of important stuff. You know, I mean, again, it's you know, when you develop the spheres of action, we look at each sector, and they all kind of rise up here. And so I think the takeaway is that there's work to do, and it's clarified somewhat, but there's work to do. So that's my initial thought.
I'll jump in. It looks like invest in additional planning assistance is at the top. And I think knowing the conversations we had at the symposium, that's not unsurprising. It came up in, I think, 2 of the areas as a really important ripe for action piece. So I just wanted to reflect that that's certainly something that's important and something that came up during the symposium and something we're thinking about at the state level too.
And it's just interesting, data is not as high on the list for folks as and that, you know, again, probably reflective of potentially, you know, where people are working, you know, so at our level, policymaker level, it's data is important, more important than maybe, you know, for folks who are, you know, on the ground getting work done. So just that's an interesting observation, I think.
Yeah, I would like to just add on that thought that many of these things go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And so we're going to see the need for developing some of these things in tandem, or as assets and resources become available, we might have to pull and push priorities. We'll definitely, so keeping them all on the list is really important, but just being able within our states and regionally to be able to say, hey, where can we move the needle, or where is the low-hanging fruit? You know, that'll be part of all of our roadmaps or strategies or priorities as we move forward.
It is interesting to me noting that it's kind of the community planning piece and the support for business and workforce development are kind of the buckets that are really jumping out here. And I think for a lot of folks, that's where things are happening. That's where the stuff is actually hitting the ground, with businesses trying to provide services and provide employment and grow themselves, and communities trying to navigate and understand their positioning in this sector and how they can benefit from it in ways that work for their community. Anything else on the polling that John? And again, just as context, we'll be taking, you know, all of these materials, all the, yeah, not just the 10 ideas, but the 5,000 sticky notes that were generated during the symposium, and trying to synthesize and generate some follow-up ideas and report to share with folks in terms of thinking about where some of the next steps are in this work. So this is an interesting data point. We appreciate everyone taking a minute to respond to that. Yeah, Jackie.
I just wanted to say one final thing, Mike, which is that thinking about planning assistance and coaching, you know, we think about municipalities needing that support, but I know in Vermont, we also think about trail organizations, nonprofit organizations who are supporting those communities with planning for outdoor recreation on the ground and maintaining those resources. So just wanted to note, in addition to workforce, and workforce being an important piece of that as well, and business, but that those are also stakeholders that I read from those top two priorities as well.
So yeah, I see the note in the in the chat, but if anyone any participants have additional questions that you'd like to toss into the Q&A, we've got a few more minutes we can dive into that. I guess one last thought I would put out to folks, and I think I think Steph, you referenced this kind of to some degree anticipating perhaps inevitable growth in the sector and the role of outdoor recreation in this region. And again, that comes in part from a visitation standpoint, and acknowledging that this is a region that is becoming increasingly attractive, and there's a lot of investment happening in this sector. So it's fair to anticipate increased visitation in the region and economic activity, but also I think fair to anticipate increased migration to the region, and the role that outdoor recreation plays in that space in terms of making communities attractive as places for folks to work, particularly as people increasingly work remotely and things like that. It's curious if folks have any kind of closing thoughts on that anticipated growth in the region, and things to, again, both proactively and in response to that, to help ensure that as we see, again, if that actually happens, if we see an increased growth from this sector, thoughts you have to help us all make sure that we're thinking about and acting in ways that growth is sustainable. And again, I think Laura, you referenced Sustainable Tourism Initiative in New York, but any final thoughts from folks on that sustainability question, again, both from an economic standpoint and from a community and environmental standpoint, as we go forward, anticipate, again, in general, we would recognize it as good. We'd like to see more people coming and experiencing the region. Many of our communities would like to see more people moving to the region to live here, but there are risks that come with that. So I guess I would invite each of you, if you have thoughts, to share any last thoughts on that question of sustainability and how we can help ensure that outdoor recreation continues to be a positive driver in our rural communities. And Steph?
Sure. Well, I think probably surprising to no one on this panel, but I think my answer will be the more that we can invest in planning, ahead of time, anticipating those challenges and really empowering communities to think about, what makes this really special, what are our non-negotiables, and then what are we going to do as things change? Because change is the only thing that's inevitable. The only thing that's not, you're going to always have change. It's coming regardless, right? So how do you direct it? I think, Jackie, we've had these conversations a lot. The growth and the change is going to happen. How do we direct it in a way that's going to be reflective and respectful of our community's character? And that goes for the recreation economy. That goes for just other growth and development challenges. At the symposium, we talked a few times about the amenity trap report that Headwaters Economics had put out. I might drop that in the chat as well. Just some of the things to keep in mind as you are growing your recreation economy, to make sure that you are planning for impacts of things like housing, impacts from, disaster preparedness, to your fiscal bottom line as a local community. And these are all issues that I think, local communities everywhere, but including in the Northern Forest region, will have to tackle. And the more you can, engage in that planning early and often, and engage all of the people in your community and also the ones who are new. I think one dynamic that I've seen in a lot of my, community work is this divide between the from heres and the come heres. And I think the more that we can get beyond that and really embrace, at the local level, regional level, state level, okay, let's, make sure we're including folks who are coming to this region and trying to engage them in the process too. I think that will help, our planning be reflective of kind of what our new futures are going to be.
I'll add to
Yeah.
Steph's comments because I think, I totally agree with Steph. And I think the other strategy that we can think about, and I know we're thinking about in Vermont, is, how do we create those regional partnerships and connections? If we can build something at the local level, how do we work regionally to ensure that maybe what we don't see as part of our community is part of our region? And then how do we start to build systems that build strength in those regional connections to support and maybe be proactive about some of those challenges that we can foresee and that we do know about? And then how do we look for models that help us think ahead and look forward to prevent some of those things that maybe come as a surprise when we're successful at building an outdoor recreation economy? But just a couple of thoughts from Vermont.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think my thought about growth is that I think growth is totally fine and acceptable and should be encouraged, provided it's responsible and sustainable. And so what does that really mean? And so depending on whether it's a regional, state, or community perspective, sort of right sizing it for the right time and place and who the players are. I think we're sometimes growth, whether it's volume in terms of people or other forms of growth, economic and so forth, sometimes that's out of our control. And we saw that in the pandemic. So what did we learn from that? I think Stephanie and Jackie's points kind of hit the nail on the head. Well, we also see, in migration, we have a lot of climate type activity out west that are driving people back east. I think that's only going to increase. We have ample supply of clean water and so forth, things of that nature. So how do we plan around that? But also, of course, like the elephant in the room is, getting on top of housing and things of that nature. And so, how are we going to tackle that one? And I was at a meeting this morning. It was a community meeting led by the chamber, and our commissioner was there. And it was employers that are getting around a table and saying, all right, let's have, we've been talking about this for quite a while now, but we haven't really, I'm not so sure how much we've actually done. So I would encourage folks to participate, even if it's out of your wheelhouse or scope, participate in different ways, or think about just getting involved, because that's where some of that collaboration and then innovation is an outgrowth of that. So I think that's an important part, is getting involved, because this is the outdoor industry in and of itself is cross-sector. And so that's kind of where the answers come from, is that working within that ecosystem with the various players and then finding a pathway through that effort. And so, we're excited about tackling some of these things here in our home state, but everyone's got these issues. So as different people tackle things, we could learn from them and so forth. But getting involved, I think, is a big part of this, because that's not always the case.
So I've got one quick question. It's not really a quick question, but there's one question in the Q&A that I just want to take a minute to just touch on before we close, which is the question of how are Indigenous communities being incorporated into outdoor recreation planning? And I know, Steph, you've done some work in that space, and they're not here, but I know in Maine there's a very active Wabanaki cultural tourism program that's working in this space to some degree. But I invite any of you to share any thoughts, experiences in terms of how Indigenous communities are being engaged in these conversations.
I'll add just very quickly, we've had the opportunity to work with some Native communities through the work program, one of which was featured at the Symposium, the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe in Akwesasne, New York. And, so we've learned a lot in partnering with, tribes and Native communities who are actually leading and we're learning and following in their footsteps. And so, I'm by no means an expert in exactly how, we should be working moving forward, but I will say in the work that we've done through the work program in partnership with Indigenous communities, it's been incredibly powerful to see, the role that they're taking in leading efforts, not only around outdoor recreation, but also cultural tourism. I think we've learned a lot from the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe folks around what they're doing in that regard. And it's just such a key critical element of who's driving the conversations around outdoor recreation and making sure that it's reflective of all of the communities and all of the people who are in a region, in a state, in a local community. And so it's something we're always struggling through with the work program. And I'm sure everyone who's participating in this webinar would have good ideas of things we should be thinking about. But it's something we've had some experience with the work program. Many of our projects, even if the Native or Indigenous community is not the lead applicant, they're a key member of the steering committee. So in some cases they're leading, in some cases they're part of the committee. And I think it can work in different ways depending on, the particular circumstances. But I would love to hear responses from other panelists.
I can just share, DEC, we actually have an Office of Indian Nation Affairs that leads the relationship with the nations in New York State, government to government consultation on, natural resource stewardship. I can actually, I'll drop a link in the chat to our office's page. So they're really the lead on that relationship and that work. So I'm also not the expert. I will say in New York, we did in a couple of years ago have one of the largest transfers of land to the Onondaga Nation. So that is definitely paramount to New York, to DEC, and we have a specialized team that's their focus.
Anyone else?
I'll just chime in and share that I think for us in Vermont and the work that we're doing, this is an area of growth for us. To date, my work has not overlapped directly in that sphere yet, but I do want to reflect that it is important, and it is an area that I see as a part of our work on equity and looking for opportunities to better engage and integrate into the work that we're doing moving forward.
Great. Thanks. I'm minding the clock. So I think we're just about at our time now. So I want to offer a few thanks. I guess a few thanks to everyone who's here today, folks who participated in the symposium back in May, our panelists in the broader planning committee, for really leaning into this issue and this sector. I think we're increasingly recognizing, as I think we've heard throughout today's conversation, that when we think about outdoor recreation in a place like the Northern Forest, this is a very broad-reaching topic. It's an economic issue. It's a business development issue. It's a community development issue. It's a community livability issue. It's an education issue. It's a housing issue. It's a health issue. So I think increasingly, as we are recognizing the cross-cutting nature of this sector, it's increasingly important, and there's increasing opportunity for really good, proactive, constructive action in this space. And that's both at a community level, at a state level, and hopefully at a regional level as we carry this work forward. And we are eager, from a Northern Forest Center standpoint, we're eager to work with everyone who's involved here to continue to map this out and support the sector as we go forward. I do want to offer one special thanks to a couple of my colleagues who've been very closely involved with this work, both organizing the symposium and are the ones who are making this webinar work in the background. Isabella Ronson and Joe Fox, who've been really important contributors to this work from a Northern Forest Center standpoint. Again, all of our planning committee and our friends at Hey Joe, our friends Rich and his team at the Northern Border Regional Commission have been consistent and staunch and enthusiastic supporters of this work. We're looking forward to working with everyone going forward. I think just in terms of immediate next steps, just so folks know, we don't currently have a next webinar planned. This is a regular series that we work on. I think it may be sitting for the summer. But we really appreciate folks taking the time to join us here, and encourage everyone, if you have a chance, to do a quick respond to the quick evaluation of this webinar, there's a link in the chat right now. And if you're interested in these kinds of issues and others across the Northern Forest region, encourage everyone to sign up for the Northern Forest News Digest, which we put out on a regular basis to help share information from each of the Northern Forest states and nationally on issues that are important to the future of this region. So again, I hope I've said thank you to all the appropriate folks. And again, thanks to Rich and the team at the Border Commission, our planning committee members here, and those who weren't able to be here with us, and everyone who was able to join us at the symposium back in May. And on that note, I think that will conclude our business here today. So thanks everyone, and we look forward to being in touch on these issues in the coming months. So thanks all.